Hi everybody, it's Nikki here and welcome to a bookish video. So today's video is my September reading wrap up. This is where I talk about all the books that I read throughout the month of September. Now in September I did take part in the magical readathon hosted by G from Book Roast channel. I will link her channel in the description box for you down below. So I have my stats prepared this time. For the last few months I've not been this prepared when I sat down to do the video, but I am prepared now. So I read a total of 14 books. I really did feel like I was on such a drive for the first 3 weeks of the month. I was flying through my books. And then that last week, the last book I read, I don't know what it was. I'll explain when I get to it, but 14 books. The physical pages of books that I read read 4,302 pages. 0 of those were ebook pages. So I'm a little disappointed that I didn't read any of my ebooks this month. I do really want to, I think I might make that a focus for Bookgammon next year, in that one of the books at least has to be an ebook, so that I'm at least using my ebook subscriptions for at least one book a month. The audio hours of owned books, so I own the physical book but I chose to listen to the audiobook for it, was 17 hours and 54 minutes. And the audio hours for a book that I do not own physical copy of was 7 hours and 52. The ratings that I gave 4 5 stars. It was a real good month. I gave 1 book 4 stars, 6 books 3 stars, 3 books 2 stars. There was no 1 star this month, which we like. And then there was one that I did not finish. Although it's not a bad thing. The genre, I read 1 thriller, I read 2 contemporaries, I read 1 classic, 3 middle grades, 1 manga graphic novel, no non-fiction, which is really disappointing because I do really like to get my non-fiction read, and 6 fantasy or sci-fis. The origin of the books that I read, 3 were borrowed and 11 were owned. The format of the books that I read, 11 were read physically, 3 were read audibly, and none were read e-bookily. It's my new word. Bindings. The bindings of the physical books that I read. Now this number doesn't quite add up, so I think I've counted the books that I read audibly as well, because I have the physical copy of them. So 1 was hardback and 12 were paperback. But as I say, I think 2 of those books were 2 of the audiobooks that I have a physical copy of. The genders, male, there were 6 male and 8 female. So those are all my stats. Now there was 1 book on my TBR that I kind of started but then decided not to continue, and that was Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Now I haven't put this down as a DNF because literally I was like 6 pages in. I started this because this was on my magical readathon to read a thriller, but I wasn't enjoying the writing style. There was a few choice words that were used and I just didn't like it. I am going to put this back on my shelves for another time. Maybe I might be up for it at another time. But I was in such a good reading mood at the point that I picked this up that I thought I'm not going to spoil it. And I did have another thriller that was on my Bookgammon TBR that I knew I could replace for this prompt. So I was still reading a thriller for the magical readathon. It was just coming from my Bookgammon TBR instead of a separate book. Yeah, I didn't count this as a DNF. I'm just literally saying I didn't read this one, even though technically I read the first 5-6 pages. So that is going back on my shelf. The book that I did DNF or did not finish is not a bad thing, okay? The reason why is it was the Odyssey of Homer. This is translated and with an introduction by Richmond Lattimore. Richmond, not Richard, like I keep saying. And I got that far in. I basically got to book 3, like that. And the reason being is that I was taking it slowly. I'm studying it. That's the reason why I did not finish this, and I didn't get too far in it either, because I'm annotating this. So I want to take this in and take my time with it, because with it being an epic poem, with it being classical literature, the words that are on the page are a lot more eloquent, and there's a lot more to them than what is actually being said. There's like meaning behind their words, and I'm having to figure that out as I'm going along. So it's not just a case of simply reading it and understanding it. I have to really think about what I'm reading. So I realized it was taking me, like, I could only do this in sort of like 25 sort of minute spans, and in that 25 minutes I was maybe reading 3 or 4 pages. So I did not finish this, but it's going to be an ongoing process. So that's that one. Okay, so on to the books that I did read. I'm going to give you these in the order that I read them, because that makes it easier on my spreadsheets, like I use a computer. I don't. I have multiple notebooks on my notebooks, because it's easier, but I will let you know which books I used for the magical readathon. So the first book I read was actually an audiobook on Scribd, and that was The Shadow Keeper, which is book 2 to The Dream Snatcher by Abby Elphinstone. I gave this 2 stars. My notes say, sequel to Dream Snatcher, some convenient solutions to problems, plot getting interesting, good ending. However, I can't really remember what happened. So, I have no idea. I have no idea what happened. Anybody else have that problem? That the books that they read at the beginning of the month, if they're not that interesting, you just can't remember by the end of the month what they were about. So yeah, I do remember zoning out half the time with the audiobook, so it didn't blow my socks off, let's just say that. So that was that one. The next book I read was Secret of the Sirens, which is a library book written by Julia Golding. Now, I gave this also 2 stars, but I do remember what happened in this one. It says, my next day, very slow paced, found myself skimming, good ending. The original meaning of Greek sirens, not mermaids. So yes, as you can understand, I was very excited about this because it had sirens in the title. So I was thinking mermaids, and even the pictures have these fish tails, but these girls with wings. Now, this does use the original meaning of the word sirens, which are these bird-like female creatures. And this story was really good, actually. I say really good. I gave it 2 stars. The writing was a little bit like, I just felt like I wanted more danger. I wanted, like, it was predictable. I mean, it's a children's book, so it's going to be predictable. Yeah, it was a good story, and I think, look, if I saw the sequels, there's a sequel called The Gorgon's Gaze, Mines of the Minotaur, and The Chimera's Curse. If I see them in the library, I might pick them up, but I'm not going out and physically looking for them. So yeah, it was a good story, but if I hadn't read it, it wouldn't have mattered to me much. I wouldn't have missed out much. So that was that one. The next book I read was Zachary Black, Duke of Debauchery by Carol Mortimer. Now, when I read the synopsis for this. It says, Zachary Black finds a mysterious veiled woman hiding in his carriage, and there's only one thing to do: carry her to his bedchamber and find out what she wants. And I was kind of taking the mick out of that. Turns out there was more to this plot than just a horny little man. I flew through this. I read this in a day. Like, it was so... I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars because I always feel wrong giving these a high score, but actually I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. What I love in the Mills and Boon range. It was so horny. I loved it. It was brilliant. I loved it. What was my notes on it? Couldn't put it down. Loved the intensity. Not much plot, but great sexual tension. It was brilliant. I loved it. Highly recommend. If you like your Mills and Boon, your smut, yeah, loved it. The next book I read, oh, it happened. It happened. I read it. Okay, so you know how some people, they'll say, I finished the book and I immediately picked it back up and started from the beginning again. I never understood that until I read this book. As soon as I finished it, I was like, I want to read that all over again. I do. I so nearly did as well, but I had the magical read. If it had been a month where I didn't have a readathon, I would have read this twice because I loved it so much. It is, of course, For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. This was my star book for Bookgammon for 2 months, and Bookgammon didn't let me get it. So I managed to get it on for Magical Readathon. So yes, I read this for the Magical Readathon, and oh, I can't wait for book 2. I just wanted to read it straight away again because I love this world. 5 stars, obviously. So my notes for this was sisterly bond, wolf who smells like a library. How's that for a description of a man? Evil priestess, creepy word, atmospheric, amazing. This was just, you know when you're really, really excited about a book and then you pick it up and you're so scared because you don't know if it's going to live up to that expectations. Well, this book not only lived up to my expectations, but it gave me so much more. Just pick up the book. Just pick up this book, read it, because you're going to love it. Please love it. Please don't pick this book up, dislike it, and then come back and tell me, because I won't appreciate that. But yeah, I loved it. 5 stars. It was such a pleasure to read as well because it was so fluffy. So yeah, I loved it so much. It was everything I wanted it to be. It really was my star book of the month. That's what this was, my book of the month. The next book I read was a mermaid book, and this is Mermaid Moon by Suzanne Cockle. This is a very beautiful edition. I gave this one 3 stars. It says descriptive but overly so. Not the story I was expecting, didn't connect with the characters. Kind of tired of feminist retellings of The Little Mermaid. But the reason why I say I'm getting kind of sick and tired of feminist retellings of The Little Mermaid is because they're always trying to make out like The Little Mermaid falling in love with the prince was a bad thing. And I'm like, why? Why are you doing that? I don't like that. Men are not bad people. Like, we don't need to hate on men in order to raise women up. Stop using that as a trope in your feminist retellings of The Little Mermaid. I don't like it. I feel like it misses the whole point of The Little Mermaid story. The Little Mermaid is not about her falling in love with a prince. It's about getting a soul. The Little Mermaid wants a soul. And that's what the original story is all about. And the reason why the Little Mermaid is seeking a soul is because mermaids don't have them because they live forever. And humans do have souls because that's why they're not immortal and they live short lives, so that their soul can then go up to heaven. And I feel like these feminist retellings of the Little Mermaid story completely miss that whole meaning of the story. And I'm getting a bit sick and tired of it, to be honest. I need to read the original Little Mermaid again because I love my mermaid books. This didn't have her as a mermaid. This had her as a human throughout the whole of the book. It had some mermaid in it when it flashed back to the mermaids in the sea that were waiting on her, because she would sing to them to let them know what was going on land, and so we'd see them in the sea. But yeah, I feel like these Little Mermaid retellings are completely missing the point of the original story, and it's really annoying me because they all seem to go for this men are bad and women are great kind of trope, and I hate it because I don't believe in pulling men down in order to raise women up. I don't like it. It doesn't sit pretty with me. So yeah, this only got three stars. It's another beautiful mermaid book and it got 3 stars. Why are they doing this to me? I want to love you. You are beautiful. You have my favourite thing in the world on your cover, and yet the story inside aggravates me to beyond measure. It didn't annoy me as much as Surface Breaks by somebody, I can't remember her name, but yeah, it wasn't my thing. So the next book I read was Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This was kind of like a book club buddy read that we didn't end up actually buddy reading together. However, what was fascinating was me and one of the other ladies in the book club, Bex, had completely opposing views. The characters that she enjoyed, like Vivenna, I didn't. I thought she was a whiny little... nearly swore. She was just whiny and felt very jealous that her sister had been sent in her place that she'd been training for years to go to. It was almost like, that's my destiny. Didn't like that. But I did like Ciri, whereas Bex hated Ciri and was kind of like skipping over those chapters, I think. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed, as I say, the magic system that was in here. This idea of these breaths that these people had. Each person is born with a breath, but some people own more breaths. And these breaths can only be given willingly. They can't be taken like unwillingly. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a standalone, but when it was like nearly finished, I was like, there's more to this story. There has to be more to this story. So yes, I do believe there is another book coming for this, but I don't know when Brandon Sanderson is planning to write it yet. So, but I can't wait to continue with this series. I just wish he would stick to one series instead of jumping around from place to place. But I mean, Brandon Sanderson writes pretty quickly, I believe, so it shouldn't be too long anyway. So, and I wouldn't mind rereading it again, even though it is a chonker, because I enjoy Brandon Sanderson's writing. So I gave this 5 stars. The next book I listened to was generally because I was playing on Animal Crossing, needed an audiobook. I found this on my, BorrowBox, which is my library's audio app, and that is The Perks of Being a Wallflower even, by Stephen Chbosky. Now, if you remember, this was on a recent TBR, and I started reading it and thought, ugh, childhood drama. And I thought, no, not in the mood for that, and I put it down and didn't pick it back up again. Well, I found it on audiobook, so I thought if I'm ever going to read this, I think audiobook is the way to go. I'm really glad I did listen to the audiobook. Now, I gave this 3 stars, and my notes say lots of trauma, trigger warnings for practically everything. Wasn't emotionally invested though until the final extra chapter, which is only available on the 20th anniversary editions. So yes, this is not a 20th anniversary edition, so this doesn't have that final chapter in. I did check. But the audiobook that I listened to did have that extra chapter. And I think without that extra chapter, this would have probably been a 2 stars. It wasn't until, as I say, that final chapter where it's kind of 20 years later, and it felt to me like it was the author who was writing that final letter, although it's down as Charlie, who is the main character in this, writing it. I felt it was more like the author writing it, because it was saying something about, I've received your letters. I've heard that I'm not alone. You are not alone. There are more of us who've been through trauma like this than we think. And as long as we all pull together and as long as we all support each other, we can get through this. And, you know, no one has to die. No one has to be alone throughout this. And it was so heartfelt, and it really choked me. Like, it really got to me, because I myself have been through abuse and through traumatic periods of my life and bad mental health and things like that. So it was kind of, it spoke to me. It really hit home in my heart, and it really, really pulled on my heartstrings. So it did get the extra star for that, but without that final chapter, this would have been a 2-star book. So I am going to unhaul this now. I feel like once is more than enough for me to read this. It's not a new favourite or anything. But I mean, I can see why this could be some people's favourite books, because it does speak to you. It does speak to your heart. It does speak to people with mental health troubles, or who've been through trauma in their life or abuse in their life. And so I can imagine how this can really pull at your heartstrings. But for me, I think because the character was a kid, like a teenager, it just didn't quite get to me until that final chapter, when it was 20 years later and he was like middle-aged man, because I'm a middle-aged woman, getting older by the day. So yeah, that was 3 stars. The next book I read was The Ship of Shadows by Maria Kuznia, and I was really excited to read this one, but it only scraped a 3 stars. My notes for this says convenient solutions, there we go again, middle grades with convenient solutions, some funny parts, interested enough to read the next book. So yeah, I don't know, I can't remember if this is a debut or not. Yes, it is a debut. Okay, so that explains it even more to me. This had potential, and I could see that potential. There was quite a lot of this where I was like, okay, it's fine. It's not blowing my mind though. And then there were moments where I went, ooh, that's interesting. Or I would giggle because there was something funny in it. I did say page 196. Let's have a look. What was so funny on page 196? Oh yeah, Jeffrey. If you've read this book, you'll know what I mean when I say Jeffrey and Malika, because can I read you it? This bit was brilliant. I actually read this to my husband and I was giggling for about 5 minutes after this because this was the best bit. If you think it might be a spoiler by reading this far into the book, then just mute me until I put the book down. But I need to read this out because this was hilarious. So mute me if you don't want to hear. Okay. So Malika is teaching the girls how to use guns. And Jeffrey says, "Women carrying pistols." Jeffrey sighed dramatically. "No man shall ever care to wed you ladies now." Malika turned and shot Jeffrey. I howled. I thought that was so funny. I could just imagine her just going. I just thought that was brilliant. It was just like, it's moments like that where I think, right, this has potential. This is a debut novel, so with debut novels, I always give them a little bit of a leeway, I suppose, because first time writing, you know, first time publishing, it's never going to be perfect, but it has potential. It has potential for the next story. I'm excited to see where the story goes, so I will be purchasing the next book in the series. I've already looked it up and I've already got it in my Amazon wishlist. So yeah, I am interested in continuing the story, and as I say, with that little excerpt, it just made me giggle. I just thought it was funny. It was brilliant. And if you know Jeffrey, you know Jeffrey. I liked Jeffrey. He was funny. But yeah, it was kind of feminist while being funny. I like that. I like that a lot. So yeah, that was 3 stars for that one. Okay, the next book was for my buddy read, and that was Specials by Scott Westerfeld. This is the 3rd book in the Ugly series, and it's kind of like the final book for Tally's Youngblood's story. The 4th book, which is Extras, follows a different character in a timeline further on in the world. Yeah, this was a reread for me because I love the Ugly series. I'm not even going to look at my notes. I know I gave this 5 stars. This is my favourite series in the world. I haven't read anything else since that has come close to the Ugly series. I haven't, and I love it. I love it so much. My notes say, not that I need to look at my notes, but anyway, what did I say? Great ending to Tally's story. Or is it the end? Great characters and world, nostalgia reading for me. So yeah, the reason why I question if it is the end of Tally's story is because I have heard, and I'm not sure how true it is, but I believe that Tally Youngblood makes another appearance in another series of Scott Westerfeld's books. I believe that she makes an appearance in the 4th book of the Imposter series. Now, I have recently purchased the 1st book, Imposters, and hopefully we'll get that on a TBR very soon. Because surprisingly, even though Uglies has been my favourite books of all time, I've never read anything else by Scott Westerfeld. And so I figured now is the time to rectify that, and I bought the book Imposters so I can start that series and see if I enjoy that as well as the Ugly series. So yeah, loved it. 5 stars, brilliant. And we are reading Extras in October, and then in November and December we're actually going to start a new series because obviously this one will be finished for November and December. So yeah, we're going to continue with our buddy reading till the end of the year at least. So yeah, that was that one. The next book I read was a library book, and that is the final book in the Vampire Academy series, which is Last Sacrifice by Richelle Mead. What an ending. Oh, what an ending. I love this series. I love this series. I was recently looking through some of Fairy Loot's posts recently, and some of the comments that were made about a particular special edition box set that they were doing. And some people were saying in the comments, when are you going to do a special edition of the Vampire Academy series? And I was like, pardon, what? Could that be a thing? So now I'm beginning to wonder if maybe I should hold off buying these books, because I do like the red editions. Let's be honest, these are gorgeous. This is a library book, so it's not my copy. But if Fairy Loot do a special edition of the Vampire Academy books, might I consider purchasing them? Considering the problem I had with a recent special edition purchase that I made with them, which put me off buying their special editions anymore. Possibly. I would have to think long and hard about it, but not too long, because they tend to sell out quickly. So I'd be tempted. That would be a definite. Depends how much it costs. Depends if I have the money. If I have the money, it's a possible yes, I would buy them. So yeah, I love this. My notes said, great ending, but yet can see how it leads nicely into the new series, which is Bloodlines. Lots of actions and whodunit mystery. So yeah, there is like a follow-on series from this Vampire Academy series, which is called Bloodlines, which follows a character that we were introduced to in, I think it was either the 4th book, I think, in this series, because this is book 6. And it follows on, and I am tempted to go on and read the Bloodline series now, probably again through the library, because yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this series. The writing is so easy to read, it flows so nicely. I fly through these books, even though they're over what? This one is 584 pages, so they're massively long books, but I can fly through this in 2 days because it's just so easy to read and it just flows so easy. I love it. And yes, I do like the Vampire Academy film. I do. I like the actors that they have for Rose and Dimitri. I like them. I'm sorry, I like the film. I like cheesy films, okay? So yeah, I absolutely love this series. I gave it 5 stars. I love the ending of this. I can't go into too much about what it's about, but Rose is in a situation where she's in trouble. And it was very cleverly done how Rochelle Mead is using some of the magic and the bond between Rose and Lissa. She uses that in a very clever way to help you get 2 different perspectives of what's happening throughout the book without actually leaving the main character Rose. It is skillful. I'm sorry, I don't care what you think about this series, but it's skillful. Next book I read was the thriller book that I took from the Bookgammon TBR and put it into the magical readathon TBR, and that was Harrow Lake by Kat Ellis. Very creepy front cover there. This is Mr. Critters, this little character here. Kind of fell a bit flat for me. This got 3 stars and my notes were good beginning, end was a bit confusing, unanswered middle, not what I expected, trigger warning for child abuse. Yeah, it was just kind of like, there were some bits of it where I read it and it was like, but what about that? That bit wasn't answered. And yeah, it was a little bit weird. I liked the idea of when you have a secret to write it down and hide it somewhere so that the secrets don't stay in your head and affect your mental health. You get to write them down and hide them in places. Although as happened in here, somebody can then discover those secrets. But yeah, it was just, I didn't like the ending. I didn't like the ending because it just didn't make sense. Like, there was absolutely... The reason why I say trigger warning for child abuse is because the main character is very subtly manipulated by her father, and she has her father's voice in her head all the time, sort of telling her what she can and what she can't do. So she's kind of like manipulated by him, brainwashed, could be another word I would use. So that's what I would say about that. It's not actual like physical abuse, it's more mental abuse. Both are bad as each other. So yeah, I it didn't give me the creepy vibes that I was kind of hoping for. And the ending was just not that great. Not that great, to be honest. So yeah, 3 stars for this one. The next book that I read, and I did have to read this physically despite the fact that I normally read my classics audibly, was The Virgin and the Gypsy and Other Stories by D.H. Lawrence. And the reason why I had to read this physically and not audibly is because this collection was not on script. I might find one of the books, but not all of the books. So I did have to read them all physically. As with most short stories, it was a bit like the ones that I enjoyed I wanted more from, and the ones that I didn't enjoy kind of dragged. So literally that's in my notes. Wanted more from the good stories and bored with some of the stories. And then a religious story of Jesus' resurrection that was kind of blasphemous at the end. Yeah, the last story was definitely, most definitely, even though Jesus' name was never mentioned, but it was definitely about his resurrection. That was something to be thought about. I gave it 2 stars because, as I say, some stories were good, but I wanted more, and other stories were boring or blasphemous. So yeah, that was that one. The next book I read, this was the one that put a stop to my reading train that I was on. I was literally storming through all of these books, 3-4 books a week, till I got to this one. This took me a whole week to read, just this one book. Just this one book took me a whole week to finish. It is The Lies of La Lochmora by Scott Lynch. This was on my 5-star prediction for the Magical Readathon, and it failed. It got 4 stars, okay? So it was close. It was very, very close. This dragged for me. My note says, story of 2 halves. The first half, slow, boring. Second half, exciting and funny. Okay, so what I expected from this, and the reason why I thought it would give me 5 stars, is because this is a band of kind of bandits, thieves, and I thought this was going to have the witty banter that I absolutely love and adore. When men are just cheeky, witty, just comical, and I love that. This didn't have that in the first half. It was very, very slow. And my God, those interludes, if you've read this, you'll understand about the interludes. Why? Why? I recognise that some of those interludes did give us information that was necessary for the story that we were reading. But because the interludes were kind of taking us out and away from the story, kind of like really important points of the story as well. I was like, whoa, where are we going now? Like, you know, we're just getting to the good bit and now you want me to go off and learn about this other thing that you're talking about? It annoyed the crap out of me. Please tell me that those interludes don't happen in the second book as well, because that would just, ugh. I think that's why it took me so long, was because those interludes, every time they happened, I would just roll my eyes and go, oh, here we go, off again. However, some of the interludes were pretty good. As I say, the second half was what I wanted from this book. If the first half had been like the second half, it would have been 5 stars. It would have been so much. They got cheekier as the story got on, and I'm just going to say bug. That's all I'm going to say. Bug. Loved him. But yeah, I really did enjoy the story. It just took me so long to read. And as I say, got 4 stars. The first half just needed to be funnier. That's all. And then the last book I read, I literally read in less than an hour. Flew through it because it was only a manga. This was the last book on my magical readathon TBR. It is the Assassination Classroom Book 2 by Yusei Matsui. And yeah, this is book 2 about an alien who is threatening to destroy the Earth. He's already destroyed half of the moon and is threatening to do the same to the Earth unless they can find a way to kill him. And he has agreed to teach a classroom of misfits, and if they can kill him, he will not destroy the Earth in a year's time. So it's a funny way of them trying to kill him. And yeah, and there was a little bit of a kind of message in this one that some people prefer to keep some people down to encourage other people to try harder. So like the threat of, ooh, if you don't work hard, you'll be just like them kind of thing, and keeping those people down to keep that threat there, rather than helping those people that are in the lower class or who are struggling. Instead of helping them, you're keeping them there in that position to encourage others to try harder. So yeah, it did kind of hit upon that kind of message as well, which was done really well, I believe. I really enjoyed it, flew through it. The star rating for this was a 3 stars. My notes say sexualized women, good messages about refusing to stay in your place and equality. So yeah, so the sexualized women, it's manga. If you read any kind of manga, you will know that the women are portrayed a little sexually. There is one part in the beginning of this, like the writing is over her face and you can see what is the main feature of the picture. So yeah, there was that. It's something I don't like about manga, but it's something that is prevalent in manga, I've noticed. All the girls are like that. So it's just something that I have to put up with if I want to read manga, but it does annoy me. It does annoy me, but what can you do? I mean, what can I do? So yeah, there is that one. So that was all the books that I read in September. Have you read any of these books? Do you agree with me about my point of view? If you don't like For the Wolf, don't even tell me. I won't acknowledge it. For the Wolf is the best book ever. Just gonna say it. So yeah, that is my reading wrap up for September. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!